Hello, and welcome to the 14th meeting of the Top Shelf Society, and possibly one of the most exciting yet, because today we are joined with Miss Angeline Boulley, and she's the author of our book for this month, which is The Firekeeper's Daughter, the breakaway debut book that's just rocked the charts and rocked our worlds, and we're so excited to get to talk about it. So, Angeline, I just wanted to say I'm so humbled and honored that you're here, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here, and I'm happy to answer questions about the book and the characters and anything, really. Except for I don't reveal Jamie's real name.
Oh. All right, so first off, I'd like to just give a little bit of information about Angeline. So she is an enrolled member of the Sault Ste. Marie tribe of the Chippewa Indians and a storyteller who writes about the Ojibwe community in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. And she's also a former director of the Office of Indian Education at the Department of Education. And Firekeeper's Daughter, crazily enough, is her debut. So is there anything else you'd like to add on or share with us kind of about your story?
I am working on book 2, and I moved back to Michigan. I live a block away from my parents. This is the town I grew up in, and I'm just happy to be here.
Oh, thank you. I guess there's not much you can tell us about book 2.
What I can tell you is that it's not a traditional sequel per se, but it's set in my same tribal community, and it has a different main character. And if book 1 was Indigenous Nancy Drew, book 2 is Indigenous Laura Croft. But instead of raiding tombs, the main character is reclaiming ancestral remains and sacred items from museums to bring back home. And one of her heists goes badly.
Oh my God. So I know. Is there any type of date yet?
Well, I'm on deadline right now. I think that if everything goes well, it would be March of 2023 that it would be out. Okay,
awesome. And people are just sending you lots of love. They're all so excited to hear from you. Oh, wow. I think they're probably as starstruck as I am right now.
Seriously?
Yeah. But anyways, I want to give just a brief synopsis of the book. I'm sure everyone who's joining us already knows, but Firekeeper's Daughter is a groundbreaking YA thriller about a Native teen who must root out the corruption in her community. And when I say that that really just scratches the surface, that truly does scratch the surface of this book. I mean, there's so much more to unpack. And we'll hopefully get to all of it. But we talked to Angeline, and she said that she would like to take questions at the beginning. So we're going to go out of order for this meeting, and that's completely fine. So I'm going to open the floor now to the members of the Top Shelf Society to ask any questions to Angeline, and just let us listen and share what she'd like to share. So does anyone want to go first?
Maybe Kristen as well. Maybe we can quickly introduce I know our names are under our faces, but maybe we can quickly introduce ourselves as well, if that's all right.
Absolutely. Thank you for reminding me, Laura.
Yeah, no problem.
All right.
I can start if you want.
Yes, go ahead.
So, I'm Laura. I'm from Nova Scotia, Canada, and I met everyone here online through BookTube. So I love reading everything. I'm a teacher during the day, and yeah, that's me.
Sarah?
My name's Sarah. I'm a pathology scientist, and this is my cat,
Olivia.
And we love to read together, and we're just so happy to be here. I don't even know what to say. I'm just gushing.
I'm Kristen. I'm a 6th grade English teacher, and another kitty.
my gosh, that face.
We need a kitty introduction.
Yes, can we have an introduction to Kitty?
This is Patchy. He's a one-eyed cat, and he doesn't like to be held, but he's a sweetie.
Oh my goodness.
It is so nice to meet you, Patchy. So yeah, teacher, loves books, all of that. That's me. Angela.
Same as Kristen, studying to be a teacher, loves books. Met everyone through my Angela Rose Reads book account.
Love the cats.
Yeah, I have 2 cats too, but they're too rambunctious to allow them in.
My name's Stephanie. I'm currently in Salt Lake City, Utah, but I'm originally from northwestern Montana. And I am a NICU and oncology, or a NICU and pediatric oncology nurse. And I met everyone through BookTube.
And so for our regulars in the chat, make sure that you introduce yourself as well, just so we can shout you out, because we love that you always join us, and thank you so much. All right, questions. Who would like to go first?
I have a question. So obviously we read a lot of books, and I have to say that it blows me away that this is your debut. I genuinely feel like these characters are real people. And I just wanted to know all of these tiny little details that you give to all of these characters, from like the books that they read, what they smell like all these tiny little, like, oh, she doesn't want to parallel park, so she just goes over the curb, and all of those things. Are these inspired by real people, or how did you come up with all of these such good character details?
Oh, thank you so much. Some of the details are inspired by real people. My sister Sarah passed away 25 years ago, and she was 29, and she was the worst parallel parker in the world. And so I know that when my parents read the manuscript and they saw that in there, it made them happy. It made them happy that people would be kind of, laughing at Lily's, parallel parking skills. There are some characters that were inspired by real people. And other times I would dream and I would wake up and I would kind of have a character insight or some new detail. And I would do my best writing first thing in the morning. So I loved when that would happen, when those ideas would come to me as I was waking up. So yeah, 10 years, you kind of come up with a lot of details, and I outline everything in Excel. So there's a way that I keep track of little quirks and things about people.
It makes them feel so real. It's amazing.
And you mentioned real characters, and I've read some of your interviews, and you talk about how there was the undercover cop at your school.
Yes.
So that was an inspiration for Jamie, correct?
Right. It was at my friend's school. So we were both high school seniors, and she went to a different school, and this new guy ended up being an undercover officer, and he attended the school, and then right before graduation there was a huge drug bust, and then he addressed the student body and said that he was a narcotics officer, and he was there, and they arrested a lot of parents, evidently.
Oh God.
Whoa.
Yeah, because honestly I read that and I was thinking, does that really happen? Do narcotics officers really pose as high school students? And then I read your bio and I was
Yes.
yeah. So obviously that sort of piece of inspiration happened to you when you were in high school, and you had a whole career in the Department of Education. How long had the story been stewing in your brain before you wrote it down, and like what made you take the step into writing, I guess?
That is a great question. It was 28 years from the time when I first had that idea about this undercover officer, undercover investigation, and this 18-year-old girl who's Ojibwe. And I was 44 when I started writing, and that was because my daughter was a preteen, and I was telling her about this idea that I had for a story, and she was really into Twilight. So she was like, wow, your story sounds even better than Twilight. And I thought, well, by the time she's ready to read it, that gives me a couple years to write it. And I did not think it was going to take me 10 years to write it. So when the book finally published last March, she's 22 and she's a senior at Michigan Tech University. And so, yeah, it took a lot longer than I thought. But I like to say that during those 28 years when I wasn't putting pen to paper, I was still creating because I was working out the puzzle pieces in my head. And I've heard other writers say that, like, it's like this one question that they want to answer. And then they're just working backwards the puzzle pieces and seeing what fits, what doesn't fit. And that's what I did. I worked in different tribal communities. And so there was an incident in one community where a group of teens got together and they were huffing. They were huffing inhalants, spray paint and aerosols and that. And so it was, the idea of, a group of kids on a reservation doing something and then maybe having a cultural component, having something happen that's related to the culture. So it was really just finding those pieces and then putting everything together. So yeah.
Because the plot is just incredibly detailed, and when you're reading it, you don't know how everything's going to come together, and then it does. But then also there's so many different themes and so many different kind of current themes woven in there as well. So yeah, very intricate.
One of my, so I have a mentor, and he said that a lot of first-time authors tend to kind of bite off more than they can chew. And he gave me the guidance of maybe I would want to write a smaller story as my first story. But I think sometimes that when you hear advice that resonates, you follow it, and you kind of know when some advice doesn't quite hit the mark. And that's how it was with that. I was like, no, at the time I was like in my early 50s. And I thought, if all I've got is this one story in me, I am going to make it as epic as possible because this might be it. And so that was not taking a respected mentor's advice. And I trusted that what I wanted to do, that I was going to go big or go home. So.
And you did.
You went
big.
Yeah.
Amazing. So who else would like to ask their question next? We said at the beginning, we were like, we have so many.
I know, I can keep going too.
Coming.
Can I just ask a really quick question? You said that you will not reveal Jamie's name, but you do know his real name.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I know his name and I know his story.
Okay,
Writer's privilege. Yes.
I have a question because I am a scientist, and I was just so happy to have like a female character who is just into science and into medicine. So can you talk a little bit about how that was important for you to incorporate into the story? Because I was loving it.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because I was always scared that maybe I got something wrong, or, I worried so much about getting it right because I am not science and math minded. That is definitely something I don't share with Daunis. I have some things in common with her, but as her character really, it's almost like she became self-aware at some point, and she just is this person who's separate from me and can have different likes and interests that aren't mine. I thought, well, it goes back to that first question of why would some undercover investigation need the help of an ordinary Ojibwe girl? And as I was figuring out those puzzle pieces, it was like, wait, what if it's a drug that you can tweak, that you can change the formula or add something to it? And that made sense because of meth. And then it was like, what if what's added is a cultural, something to do with the culture? What if she's a young woman who, despite not being enrolled, she knows her culture, she knows her language, she has really strong family ties, but her identity has always been something that, where she's viewed herself as less than or not enough. And I thought, what if she's great in science, great in math, has this really logical mind, and then knows her culture and language that actually would make her the ideal undercover, undercover informant. And so yeah, that just made sense. And I wanted to give a shout out too. So there's this Indigenous young woman, and she won the state science fair. I acknowledge her in my acknowledgments in the back of the book. Her name is Destiny Sky Little Pete, and she's the one who did the science fair project about the choke cherry pudding, and that her experiment was that if you process it in the traditional way of grinding the seeds into the pudding, it had cancer fighting properties. But if you strained it, then it didn't. And I just loved that traditional and science together. And so I tracked her down on Facebook, and I sent her a message, and I said, could I please use your science fair project into the book? I'd like to have it be Daunis's, but then I would give you credit in the acknowledgments. And I was so thrilled that she said yes. So this is a real girl who did this. I'm blown away by it.
Fantastic answer.
It's
amazing.
Yes.
As well, the program that Daunis ends up applying to and attending, is that a real program in Hawaii?
Yes, it is. And I was able to sit in on a class. So I early in the manuscript. So this was probably, I was in my mid 40s, late 40s almost. Yeah. And I went to Hawaii. It was after my divorce. And I had done my research, and I kind of knew that's where I wanted Daunis to end up. So I wrote a letter to a person at the ethnobotany program there at University of Hawaii at Manoa, and I explained about my book. I explained about doing research, and I asked for permission to be able to talk to a student in the program. And they connected me with a couple of students, and they invited me to sit in on a lecture. And so I was able to walk around the campus, and I went to a lecture, and it was so interesting. It was about architecture and cultural norms, that there's a certain type of wood that would only be used in the construction of homes for the royalty. And it was really interesting to hear this discussion about architectural design and how culture impacts that in the planting of the trees. I was blown away, and I was like, oh, I wish I had like 5 more lifetimes, because I would want to get that degree. It was so interesting.
Yeah, that's so cool that you thought of that question, Laura, because I had been wondering the same thing. And Angeline, you mentioned talking about meth because you said that you could make changes to it. And that kind of goes off a question that one of our viewers asked. They said, what made you choose to write meth opposed to other drugs?
Okay, excellent question. And it's, and that's why I also set the book in the early 2000s, because that's when Indian gaming in Michigan was especially lucrative, and it coincided with when meth really exploded across the country. It hit many communities, not just Indian reservations. But I thought that was interesting, this new money coming into the community, and then meth. And had I written it, had I set the story later, it someone's thing is clicking a lot.
Oh, I know.
I don't know who it is.
I muted it and it was still going, so I don't.
Okay.
Oh, okay. But I would have had to address opioids much more, and I didn't want to get into that story because I felt it was bigger and would need more focus. Meth was just something that there was that element of creating it, making it, adding something to it. Whereas with other drugs and substances, there's less of that. Pills that come already formed. So yeah, that's why meth just lent itself to being created. It's easy to make. And in my research, I had learned from the State Police Academy different methods of how to make meth. So I knew which ones were like easier to tweak and easier to make. So yeah.
Yeah, I felt so informed reading that part of the book because I had no idea how meth was made before. I think they go into it a little bit in that show Breaking Bad, but like I never watched it either. So like all of these things, like brake fluid, I was just like, I felt like I was getting a lesson, and it was crazy. Did you have to do much research for all of that? Yeah,
I did, even though I didn't include as much as I could have. I mean, I didn't want to provide step by step, but I wanted to include enough so that people who knew that I did my work, but I didn't want to include enough so that people who don't know would know what to do or where to start. So it was kind of a little balancing act of wanting to tell an authentic story, but yet not give readers ideas about it.
right. All right.
Are we ready? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say how I thought it was so powerful, like because I'm preparing to be a teacher and reading about unfortunate circumstances that kids can get into that, as you say, otherwise could have didn't seem like it could have gone that way. And when Daunis was thinking about Robin and how if she hadn't had her auntie's help or support, she could have easily gone that way, and how important it is to have even just one person's support, be it a family member or a teacher or anyone. And because it's like, and that was a good main point that she kept bringing up, is like she cares about the community, not just about the crime. Like, why are they doing this? What's going on? And I guess I don't really have a question. I just wanted to say how wonderful that was and how that was such a great take, because you talked about how it's like a mystery and a Nancy Drew, but it also has her heart and love for her community, and it's more than just a crime that you have to solve.
Right. I think when I first started writing it, I thought it was a crime thriller with this coming of age, element to it. But really, at its heart, it's that identity story and love for community dressed up as a thriller. So realizing that what the core of the story truly is helped me as I was writing and revising to make sure that I kept the focus on what was truly important, was the coming of age, the identity, dealing with grief, and justice, or the lack thereof. So those were the themes I wanted to make sure I focused on.
Definitely did.
Is Levi rooted in anyone in your life? Because I had very strong opinions about Levi initially, and then I was like, going towards the end.
Mm-hmm. No, Levi is purely, no. I did research because I wanted to make sure that any crime that was in the book is something that is rooted in something that really happened on a reservation. And that's why the tribal judge, that is a real thing that happened. A tribal judge in a community that was giving light sentences or tossing out on technicalities a relative's drug-related crimes, and giving harsher sentences to the competition. And then there was a man who was a tribal member. I think it was a tribe in upstate New York. And the thought of, he was charged with drug dealing. And his view was that if money's going to be made off of drugs in my community, why shouldn't a tribal member be making that money? Why is it an outsider who comes in and makes the money? Kind of like tribal businesses first. And I thought that was really interesting. I thought that was a really interesting thing to explore, because I wanted there to be a part of Levi that is rooted in something that someone could say, okay, I it's warped, but I get it, you know.
One question that I have, I saw in your book club guide that you said that this was the book of your heart. And I just want to give you the opportunity to share, like, how do we see your heart and what is you in this book?
The part about Daunis that loves her community, even knowing its flaws, even knowing that sometimes of not being accepted all the time or being viewed as an outsider, of still fiercely loving my tribe, my community, my family. That's, and then parts about Lily that remind me about my sister. I had my grandma on my non-native side didn't care much for Indians and didn't like my dad. So, there's just little parts of me that are maybe in every character. There's a lot of me in Daunis's mother. There's some of me in Mike's mom. There's part of me in different characters. And so really, I feel like if you read the book, I just feel like parts of me that maybe I haven't shared with, in real life. So
I sort of noticed that a kind of a reoccurring theme throughout the book was identity, and as you mentioned, like Daunis's strong connection with her tribal community, but also often being thought of as both an outsider in her tribal community and also within her mother's side of the family. And Jamie also sort of feeling the loss of not having been raised in his own community. I was wondering, did you intentionally sort of weave those themes in of identity and Yeah, I guess that's my question.
Yes, Laura, it was intentional. I wanted Daunis to have all these different factions of her identity, that she is part of all these different groups. And even though she feels like an outsider, she's still so very connected. And I liked the idea of Jamie kind of being the opposite, or a mirror image of that, and not having an identity to draw from, and having that absence of it, and then him, falling in love with this girl who has everything that he's ever wanted. She knows her culture and language. She's connected to everybody. Everybody knows her. And she's just this most incredible being that he's ever met. And I wanted that to be, part of their dynamic. Is for him to be completely besotted with her.
I thought it was interesting too, sort of to think about Daunis's mother and how she could have made the decision to raise Daunis away from her father and away from her community and away from her aunt, but that didn't happen, and like how much richer her life is for having that identity.
Yeah, and I kind of have it as like maybe a backstory that Daunis's mom, Grace, that she would pick her battles carefully, and her parents being adamant of the dad not being on the birth certificate. I felt like that's why Grace fought so hard for Daunis's name to be Daunis, because that means daughter, and that if she wasn't going to have her dad's last name, she was going to have a name that meant, that people would know that's his daughter. So I felt like sometimes we fight harder for our children than we do for ourselves. And I felt like that was a case with Grace, that she could stand up to her parents when it came to Daunis, but not necessarily for herself. So, yeah.
Did you have a similar time in your life, or was it because you were writing for kind of almost your daughter and her age group, of how we were talking about, and you had said the dualities, like hockey and not hockey world, and then what are the two sides of her family, and her science side, but then her community traditional side. And she at the beginning really wanted to keep a lot of that separate, or didn't think they could coalesce as well, but I felt like through the book, through various ways, they all kind of mesh. And then at the end, it was fabulous how she was able to incorporate traditional medicine and real is that not real, but traditional medicine and science medicine at the college. And just the beauty of seeing that both sides can sometimes work together perfectly. You don't have to choose one or the other, keep them so separate. Did you have to ever come to terms with anything like that? Was that a growth for you, or is that just worked out for Daunis's character, or have you witnessed that in a lot of people?
Yeah, I think that I did come to that in claiming my own identity, and that both things can be true. I can be the daughter of, a woman with roots in England, and I can also be a daughter of a Ojibwe man who was born on Sugar Island in a shack and didn't have a birth certificate until he was 16, and was raised with Ojibwe as his first language. Both things are true because I exist, and I don't have to choose anything. My identity can, it's kind of like when you have one child and your heart swells and you can't fathom your heart growing anymore. And then you have another child and you realize your heart is infinite and it can expand. And I think that's it with how I view my identity, is it can be all of these things. Denying it is what doesn't feel natural. accepting everything. And that's the thing that makes the most sense to me. So I really like that phrase, both things can be true. I guess I would amend it and say all things can be true. And it's only when Daunis embraces all these aspects of her personality, all these aspects of her identity and her worlds, that she comes into her, really her superpower. So yeah, I thought that would be really, I hoped that young reader, teen readers would see that and maybe think differently about how they view themselves.
And I think it's so important for teen readers. I teach 6th graders now, but I did some teaching in high school, and I not too long ago was in high school myself, and still am not reconciled truly to all the different parts of me. I know that I'm more than just a girl who loves books, and a lot of times in my life, I've kind of just been put into like that category, or only see myself as that. And it's limiting,
Yeah.
And so it's a message that's so important for teenagers and even old people like me to understand.
If you're old, I'm ancient.
We have a question about your daughter's reaction to the book. So I'm going to pull that up. Bridget asks, has your daughter read the book now? What was her reaction?
I'm refilling my wine really
quickly.
Nice.
And I need to improve my lighting for a second. So, pardon me.
No
I'm learning these tricks. If I need backlighting to balance out my the lights that I have. Oh, and your little cat wants to come back. Okay, so I'm refilling my wine also.
Nice.
Yes, important.
On this rosé kick, I started drinking rosé during COVID. I decided it would be the summer of rosé, and I was like living in the DC area, working from home, and felt really lonesome. And so every night at 5:00, I would sit out on my front step and I would just like wave or say hi to anyone that was walking past. And I would drink my glass of wine. And the summer of rosé turned into like the season. It's like it's still going on. So yeah.
That's
Do you have any favorite recommendations?
Yeah. I drink this stuff, I call it chicken wine. I think it's called
Oh, sounds delicious.
It translates to the Old Farm. And it's this rosé that I can get it in a box. And anyway, like box rosé.
Box
wine. Well, it's good because then you can just have one glass and you don't have to worry about your wine going skunky before you get to the end of the bottle. And so if I'm just having one glass at happy hour, yeah. Okay, so back to the question. My daughter has read several versions of the manuscript over the 10 years. She loves it. She is my hugest fan. And I just feel so fortunate that she always believed in me. She always thought the story was so interesting. And what has come to pass, she would be the first person to say that it was well-deserved and that she's glad that the world sees what she sees. Like, she is that cheerleader. She's just incredible. And she's good in math and science, and she gets that from her dad, not from me. And I was like, oh, you sure don't get that from me. And she said, what I get from you, I can stand up in front of any group and I can talk about any subject. I can introduce myself. I can carry a conversation. And I thought, okay, that's pretty good. So my daughter kind of has the best of both her dad and I. I think she's got like our best qualities.
And does your daughter ship Daunis and Jamie?
It's important.
No.
And
Ooh.
No.
yeah,
We got some tea.
but
No?
you know, I think it is so great that Daunis like chooses herself
Yeah.
and her career in the end.
That makes sense to my daughter.
Yeah.
That makes sense. She's
Mhm.
yeah. She's not a romantic, dreamy heart. She fully embraces Daunis's decision, and she's not at all like, oh, but if only. I think maybe when she was younger she did, because when she read the Hunger Games, when she read that trilogy, she was so mad she rewrote the end, like she wrote her own little epilogue, and it was kind of like this little Noah's Ark. Like, you know, she had this person ends up with this person, and you know, the Primrose ends up with Gale, and
Oh.
little like Noah's
Wow.
Ark of how everything was supposed to be. But that's when she was young, and I think now she's a young woman who knows life isn't like that, and that's not the happy ending for a woman is to end up with a man. Like, maybe that's a part of it, but there's something more, and I'm very thankful that she is of that.
And
Nice.
I want to say thank you to you, Angeline, because I wish when I was growing up that there were more books where the happy ending was the girl choosing herself.
Yes.
Because I feel like I've had to unlearn a lot of the stuff that I admired so much growing up and watching Disney movies, when the girl always ends up with the guy, right? We're taught to believe that is our happy ending. Girl meets boy, happily ever after. And what I really needed was a book like yours,
Totally.
where happily ever after is you going after your dreams. I wish I would have had it then, because even if I had had more role models in that way growing up, I feel like parts of my life would have turned out different, because I would have seen that decision modeled by others.
Yeah, I felt like that about the Harry Potter epilogue, where they all ended up with their high school boyfriend, girlfriend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, their dating pool is a lot smaller. I mean,
We have another question from one of our members, Kelly. Kelly said, not sure if you can tell us, but do you know what happens to Daunis and Jamie in the future? I couldn't tell if there was a little hint going on there. Will we get to see them again and learn where they end up?
I know exactly what has happened to each of them, and I think you will know. You will find out. Yeah.
Okay. That's nice. But even if we didn't, like, I'm so satisfied with the ending. Like, nothing could make it more perfect.
Yeah. And isn't that like the greatest gift of love you can give to someone, is wanting them to be like complete? And you know, it was such a huge thing for Jamie, you know, his lack of identity. And I was proud of Daunis for that. And I just thought, you know, all of the pain that she went through, you know, watching the Lily and Travis saga and learning from Auntie's stories, and even seeing her mother and father's own relationship that never happened. I just felt like if she gained this wisdom beyond her years, then that was, you know, it doesn't make it worth all the pain, but I just felt like that was a really good thing that I wanted to do.
Yes.
And maybe it, you know, and I'm 56, and so I wrote this book when I was in my late 40s and early 50s. And maybe if I had written it when I was a younger woman, I might have viewed the world differently. But I'm thankful for the perspective that I have now and seeing the things that are really important and wishing for young women to know that sooner than I learned it.
Yeah. And I love that you bring up the wisdom that comes with age and the perspective that comes with that, because that's such an important part of your book too, is the wisdom of the elders. And I know personally that it was so refreshing and beautiful to see how elders were respected and treated with the Ojibwe. And then it was just such a contrast. I mean, we have cartoons that just make fun of elderly people. And I think we all kind of talked about this, how sad it is and how we wish it was different for us.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the greatest things about my tribal community is that respect for our elders. And I wanted to show the elders the way that I know them. I mean, some of them are raunchy, some of them are funny, some of them are ornery. But they're vibrant, they're alive, they have so many stories to tell. And I just, wanted to show that and have them be a meaningful part of the story and not just window dressing. Like they are a critical element of the story. And I'm so glad that has been seen and valued. I'm glad that my publisher was like, this, they're like, this is great. We've not seen anything like this. And so I'm glad. And I hope that it gets other writers thinking about, showing, maybe because I'm closer to being an elder, but just older, but still a lot to contribute in life.
Yeah.
So was that real or was it wishful thinking on your part when you were describing them as, I can't remember the exact line that one of them said, but when she had brought up, can I learn traditional medicine with you? And can I also do this? Can I be your apprentice? And they said something along the lines of like, we're always staying up to date or something like that, and they had their cell phones in the group chat and stuff. Is that,
that was Sini Nimke who said that and was like, we have always adapted to survive. We are not stagnant. And what really sparked that is my dad is 80 years old, and he used to complain about us being on our smartphones all the time. And he'd be like, get your head out of that phone. Well, then our town got this grant, and it was for senior citizens could get a free iPad if they agreed to get tutored by teens that were completing a community service project. So my dad learned how to use an iPad from some high school teens, and we cannot get him off that iPad now. And I just loved that of him, who had been the most vocal against technology like that. He's connected with, old Navy buddies. He watches dobro guitar videos on YouTube. He watches powwow drum singers. It's like this whole world. He just is at his fingertips. And so I liked the idea of a group text that the elders would have where they're like, hey, if you're on the ferry, do this now. I loved it.
And such an important group text too. It was such a dramatic moment, and yet it was also so funny. Because that was just that scene will always stick with me.
John Z. Keewaydon, swearing up a blue streak and his feet against the door, the door to keep it, blocking Levi's driver's door from opening and swearing and everything, and then patting his car afterwards and saying it's a good pony. Like, those are the elders that are familiar to me.
Yes.
I was cracking up.
Question for you guys. Okay, if you could do one of these 4 things, what would you do? You could go bottle picking with Johnsy, medicine gathering with Seanie, joyriding with Minnie Mustang, or garage sales with Granny June. Like,
Garage sales with Granny June.
Oh, that's so hard.
I would go medicine picking because
Yeah.
I think it's
Me
really
too.
fascinating, the natural medicines and stuff. I mean, we learned a bit because I grew up on a reservation too, and we learned a bit about it when we'd go to like river honoring, and to like we have this people center where you learn a lot of things, and in school and everything too. But I just think it's very interesting to try to mix them, because I do work in healthcare and was trying to like incorporate the different parts of people's cultures that you can into treating them holistically.
yeah, definitely. You know, those teas that that my grandma would make, and those different, a poultice, or some brew that she would do and put cloths in it and then wrap the cloths around my dad's neck, and she swore that that would keep him from getting sick. And maybe it was like true because of social distancing, because it stunk so bad that no one would get like,
Can't catch anything.
yeah, there might have been something to that, but yeah.
Is that actually, have you heard of, because you had talked about how the girl who'd done the science fair project, how that was actually a real project. Is that actually happening that you know of by chance, of anyone studying that combination? Or
I think so. Yeah. I think that there are scientists that are really interested in looking at indigenous medicines.
Mhm.
And there are many many pharmaceuticals that are on the market now that originated aspirin. There's other medicines that started out as, indigenous home remedies that have a scientific basis to them. Yeah.
I have a question. Well, I don't know if it's a question or a comment, but I just keep thinking about the blanket parties and like what ended up happening. And we don't know. We don't know if she ended up having a blanket party. I guess you can't say, but.
And I purposely kept that vague.
Yes.
For this purpose, to be like, what do you think? Do you think that her participating in the pansy ceremony meant that she didn't need to have a blanket party, or can both things be true?
I wrestle with that. I really do. I really do. I don't know. I was fascinated reading about it, though.
And people ask me, they're like, oh, is that a real thing? And I'm like, yes, it is, but you're not going to hear about it because it's on the quiet. I included it because there are other tribal communities that have vigilante type systems in place where you can pay an enforcer if you don't get justice for a crime that was committed against your family member. Winter Counts is a novel by David Heska Wanbley Wyden, and it's about this native guy who's an enforcer on his reservation, and he charges like $100 per tooth, but pedophiles are free. That happens because if justice, it's kind of like water will find a way. In Jurassic Park, life will find a way. On Indian reservations, justice will find a way. If we can't get it through the court, we're gonna get something from someone.
And it's so like refreshing, I guess, to know that that does happen at least there, because I mean, all the stories about people who go through similar things and don't get that justice. I felt so like so happy that like
Comforted.
yes, comforted, right.
Yes.
Comforted.
I thought that maybe there are these aunties and grandmas out and cousins out there that are looking out for something for our women.
Yeah.
So yeah, I will say, if some grandmas and aunties and cousins, you know, get the idea, I'm fine with that. So,
Which of the 4 would you choose that you asked us? That's a hard one.
I think because I've lived the garage sales with Granny June, I actually did that with the person who inspired Granny June. I would pick the medicine picking with Sini, because that's something I feel like I don't know enough about, and I'm just so fascinated by it. But yeah, Granny June is inspired by my cousin Elaine's grandma, and we called her Tapun. And she was ornery, and she always started every conversation with me as if we were in the middle of an argument. Like, she would just start yelling at me about something, and instead of saying hello, it was like, well, you know, here you are and you're 5 minutes late. And it's like, I just showed up. But I would drive her to garage sales to look for James Michener books. And I remember one time I turned a corner too quick and the tire squealed. And she goes, "That's one way to take a corner." And just that kind of stuff just would crack me up. And so I just love the thought of this Granny June out there, like, giving hell to everybody. Like,
Loved her.
being nice to her. And she's just like, psh. You know,
Loved her so much.
I'm so glad she's based on someone, because yeah,
Yeah.
She was great.
someone in the world like that.
Oh, but we have a comment that is very accurate.
Oh yeah.
Is it this one from Becca? Let me see.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
You created so many amazing characters I absolutely love, but I have to say you did a spectacular job creating a character I despise and loathe. Grant Edwards. Ugh.
He was slimy.
call me Grant.
Call me Grant. Ugh.
But don't we know those predators? Don't we know those people who prey on young women? The men that, like, I remember being with my daughter or my nieces, and they were preteens, and that a man would look at them, and I would see that look in their eye, and I knew exactly what they were doing. And I just wanted to call attention to it, because, I mean, I think if you get any women together and you talk about the first time a man ever looked at you in a way that made you uncomfortable, it will not be surprising for a person to say, I was 11, I was 10, I was 9. I think I was 10, and I felt someone's hand on my butt in a crowded place. And I just wanted to call attention to how that grooming, the attempted grooming, it's so disgusting to me. But I wanted to also make Grant, where you think he's going to be involved in the drugs, maybe he's just a dirty old man. Or maybe he's just a dirty man trying to get with young Indian women, and he fetishizes. That makes him enough of a creep. Like, I never was clear about whether or not Grant actually is involved or not involved. Because for me, that he is a lecherous creep is enough of making him a villain.
Yeah.
There are so many parts of the book that are so dark, yet like the blanket parties and Call Me Grant, and there's a lot dealing with murdered women and
the death of her father and missing her dad so much, and like my heart would break about like how she looks for her dad in the stands whenever she would play hockey, and she would like blink until she could see him. You know, just that heartfelt grief of a girl who misses her dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I didn't like getting to the end of the book. There were really dark parts, but it didn't feel like overall, I guess, unhopeful. I didn't feel weighed down.
Yeah.
I felt like aware of those issues without sort of came away feeling more hopeful than pessimistic, I guess. Yeah.
I banked on writing an ending that was satisfying and realistic, though not necessarily a happily ever after or completely resolved. Like I knew, but I felt like knowing what we know about Daunis, that I love my ending. And if I ever have doubts about me as a writer or, you know, risks that I've taken, I read that last chapter and I'm like, yep, grand slam, hit it out. Doesn't matter what you do in the rest of your life, you did this. And
I have to say that ending was satisfying. I was very happy where you had it. And I did like that you made it like realistic as well. And Kristen actually said something that I totally agree with. Like I just feel like this is a book that like I wish I would have read like when I was younger. And it's just like so exciting to know that there are teenagers who will read this. And I love that sort of aspect. I do have a question. And I've been thinking about this for a long time too. I think the little people, is that what you call them? What is the backstory? I want to know so much about this.
Okay.
Yeah.
I grew up hearing about one of my grandma's cousins who was lost in the woods for 2 days. And when they found him, he said that the little people took care of him. And everybody was like, oh, okay. Like it was just like, oh, that's so wonderful. I'm so glad they were there for you. Like it was accepted. My father is a firekeeper and he takes care of our ceremonial fires, and he likes to take the night shift because he says that's when the really interesting things happen. And he was at the fire, and in the middle of the night, he saw out of the corner of his eye, he said she was a little wee woman and she was just sitting off to the side. I think when you look at Indigenous cultures around the world, you will see references to little people in other Indigenous communities around the globe. And that to me is like, no, that wasn't fantasy. That wasn't folklore per se. That's a cultural reality that if I say anything to my cousins about the little people, it's like, oh yeah, you know. So I wanted to include that in there. And some people are like, oh, does that make your novel magical realism? And it's like, no, that is, I'm sharing a part of our culture with you and do with it what you will. But to me, to my family, those are spirit beings that are very much a part of our community. I've never seen one, but I trust my dad saying that he did.
It's amazing I get to ask you this question.
Thank you
It is so interesting too, like so many parts of the mystery could not have been put together without having that cultural knowledge. Like, for instance, the FBI was misled by not knowing the cultural background of the Little People, and had it not been for Daunis, who possessed the cultural knowledge, they couldn't have figured it out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Her superpower is that she knows all of that. And I liked that she realized, I really did like that analogy that she draws of the FBI is here to identify the wound, wrap it, give a shot, wrap it in a bandage, and it's done. She's the only one asking about the patient and how those teens were doing. And I felt that was important, why I had Jamie and those postcards at the very end. That was like a really late addition. That was something I added like kind of at the 11th hour. And I wanted to show, like, okay, yeah, there's the part about people who ship Daunis and Jamie. But I wanted her to see that she impacted him and she changed him, and he cared about those kids too. And he hadn't thought about them that way until he learning how important that was to her. And then him going and finding that community, finding out how they were and letting her know that they were okay. I felt, to me, that was him showing that she changed him. And that made me happy to show that.
All right. Well, do we have any more questions for Angeline?
I'm happy to do a personalized book plate. So I have these stickers, and I sign them, and then you can put them in your book. And if you want to reach out to me on my Instagram, you can just let me know your mailing address, and if you want it like to your first name or a nickname or to a friend or whatever, I'm happy to just pop these in the mail to you. So miigwech, I'm so thankful for the support that you've shown the book, the love you have for the characters, and this is the least that I can do. Just thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time, for joining us. It always means so much. Thank you. And I will definitely reach out to you. I'm sure we all will.
Yeah.
And thank you for writing it too.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
All right. Oh my goodness. All right, we are still live. So I want to ask you guys, do you want to go forward with more discussion? What do you want to do?
I actually have to go because I have dinner plans. I could keep discussing for a long time, of course, but I do need to go for dinner plans. But yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Stephanie.
Okay, bye guys.
Bye, Stephanie.
Bye.
I was going to say, I feel pretty good about the discussion we already had. I thought of a question. Did anyone hear rumors of a Netflix series, or was that just, I didn't want to ask in case it was not real or just like internet gossip?
I'm not sure. I was Googling Firekeeper's Daughter earlier, and the first thing that popped up was Netflix, but I didn't click on it.
Yeah, I also Googled it too and didn't click on it, so. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's happening.
Oh, that's amazing.
I'm pretty sure it is.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Oh
It's so exciting.
Sorry, I screamed. I hope I didn't hurt any ears. That's amazing.
I just am so happy that this book exists, like you said, like that. And just think about that too. How long that she sat with this and worked on it for 10 years, and now it exists in the world and it's helping so many people. And it's also a good, besides all of the amazing lessons in the book in of itself, like she is such a good lesson. Like, you know, you have, and actually I think Daunis talked about that too, how what you have inside of you can help benefit the world. And if you keep it in, you're not necessarily as being as helpful to yourself or others as you could be. And so I know that it's fabulous it's a YA book and it's great for teens to have too, but like I got so much out of reading it as well as an adult. So I just can't promote it enough or thank her enough, or just and the fact that she wanted to join, I'm just beyond honored and amazed.
I know. I almost collapsed when she went away because I thought this is an amazing gift. Like, I just kind of cannot believe how amazing it's been just to ask questions and to, so I'm still sort of very much
I know, kind of reeling a little bit.
I know,
I got tongue-tied a couple of times trying to formulate my questions. I was like, I didn't mean that. I meant there's, but yeah,
it's just
such
so
a
such
gift.
an amazing gift. My gosh.
That book cover too is gorgeous. Like that's the best book cover.
And did you guys hear it was, I looked it up who did it, and they got I don't know if they got a Native artist to do it.
Yes, they did. It's in that
book club guide.
Yeah. Oh, and it's just so
jacket art. Oh, okay. I don't know what the difference between the art and the design is. Moses Lunham, and the design was by Rich Deus and Kathleen Breitenfeld. I love how her picture has the strawberry earrings and how she had the strawberry bracelet.
I just sort of like, I don't know about you, Kristen, but like I've had to as part of the curriculum teach about some of these topics that were really hard, like missing, murdered Indigenous women, about residential schools, about treaty education. And it's so like, it's so tough to talk about those things, knowing that some kids in your class are like experiencing trauma as a result of some of all of it, and talking about topics that are so heavy in a way where it doesn't just sound like a news story, in a way that kids can kind of connect to. And I think having a book like this that doesn't shy away from the dark topics, but also is engaging for kids and like sort of puts like having a character like Daunis that they can empathize with, I think sort of adds to, like, is a way of approaching those topics and like adding to kids' understanding. So yeah.
Right. And that happened with her niece at the end, right? Her niece got scared that she was going off to school and was like, no, you don't want to go to school. And she had to talk to her about that and be like, well, it is important that you know it, but that's not what's happening to me. But like that's so hard.
Because when recently in the news they've been uncovering unmarked graves at residential schools, and after the first graves were uncovered in Kamloops, like honestly, some of the kids are completely, rightly so, but like they're all buzzing about it, so they come to school and like you have to talk about it, and then some of them are just it's just such a hard thing to talk about. It's just how do you explain that to 9-year-olds, you know?
Laura, since I teach ELA, I have opportunity to talk about like things like that, but not as much. And I know my social studies teacher, she feels a lot of the same struggles.
Yeah. And Angela too, you're soon to be a teacher. I keep forgetting that.
It'll be a couple years still, but yeah. That's something I don't know. I don't know about the difference between Canada and America, but I've had to already talk about like what I'm comfortable like because I am not comfortable with not addressing those histories either. Like, and I know a lot of that probably comes down to the school system and what they allow and don't allow. But if they do not allow talking about certain histories, that's not okay either because you can't. It makes people who they are. Like you said, it's trauma, generational trauma, current. Like it's something important. But as you said, it's so hard.
Yeah.
All right. Well, do you guys
Let's go
want to
on a higher note than that.
Yeah.
Everyone.
I was just gonna see. I think Laura, you said earlier that like we've got such a good discussion already. I mean, we couldn't do any better after talking to Angeline. So I'm more than happy to just like talk about our next book and kind of end it here. Are you guys good with that too?
Yeah.
Angela?
I think Angela's frozen.
Okay. Oh, no. Okay, so we'll just say thank you to everyone who joined us. Our next book for August is The Maidens by Alex McCallum. There it is. Woot, woot. And our live show is Friday, August the 26th.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, Friday, August the 26th at 8:30.
27th.
Oh no!
Almost there.
The 27th. It's the last Friday of August at 8:30 p.m. Same time, same place. Will Alex McCallum be joining us? It remains to be seen. Oh. Yeah.
And also, if there's, I'm like, how do I do this? Like, I don't even know. And also check out our Instagram because we are going to be giving away 2 copies of The Chosen and the Beautiful. And this is going to be our September book club pick. So I'm really excited for that. And yeah, it's a totally stunning book. Yes. Absolutely beautiful. I'm so excited to read it. I haven't started it yet, but I'm excited for it.
Yes. All right. Well, that is it. That is the 14th meeting of the Top Shelf Society. What an amazing, special, incredible one. One for the books. And we will end this here. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in August. Bye.